Welcome. In front of me I have the Galaxy S21 Plus, which is, oh there we go, barely visible. And today I will go over unboxing along with an overview and my just opinions about this phone. Without further ado, let's just pop it open. Now for some reason the box already came a little bit scratched, as you can kind of see it right here. Not sure why, but it did come a little bit damaged. Now the phone itself is fully fine, so don't worry about that one. So starting off up here, we got some paperwork and the SIM eject tool. Let's be honest, no one really cares about that. And that's about it. And here, then we got the phone itself. Now this is already a setup phone. As you can see, there's also an applied tempered glass on here, so I won't need to actually set it up. So that's positive, but also makes it not really a true first unboxing. Now in here, we got cable and some instructions or warranty and a charging cable. Now the cable here is a Type-C to Type-C. There we go. You can see both ends are Type-C. Now, if you haven't bought actually a Samsung phone in the past, what is it, like 2 years or 1 year, something like that, then this cable will be literally useless to you, because if you have a previous charger from a Samsung device or basically majority of other companies, then Type-C to Type-C doesn't really help you in any way, because majority of them have a Type-A port, so just a typical old school USB port, and then the other end is Type-C. So in some certain cases this might be just kind of useless. So let's set this to the side and get the phone itself. So here we got a really nice 6.7-inch 1080p display, and it is what they call a dynamic AMOLED. Now in other words, this is just basically a AMOLED display at a high refresh rate. Now I'm gonna zoom in the camera just so you can get a better look at it. Okay, so there we go. So 1080p by 2400 dynamic AMOLED, and meaning it will run at 120 Hertz. Now, if I remember correctly, from what I've seen, at least in the 21 instead of the 21 Plus, if I go under the display, they only have two options. There we go, motion, adaptive, yeah. So we have the adaptive and standard. Now, for some reason, they didn't think that giving you just the actual option to set it to 120, force it into it as a thing here. So you either are stuck with the adaptive or just 60 Hertz. Now, in other words, the adaptive is basically changing refresh rate all the time. So as an example, if you're looking at a picture, it will drop, I believe it was said that it will drop to even like 40 Hertz. So you'll get 40 refreshes per second. Now for a picture that doesn't really matter, because picture you're not really moving it, and when it's stationary it doesn't really matter. You won't see any kind of jitteriness and that just disgusting look when you would actually run something fully at 40 Hertz. But then when you're actually scrolling up and down, like right here, it switches to 140. Now when it stops moving, it then switches back to like 60 or 40, just so it preserves battery. It will only go up when it needs to. Now in certain cases this might be good, but then I believe there might be some apps that just kind of won't be implementing this correctly, and for instance they will be either running fully on 120 or they won't be running at 120 at all, because the phone might consider this to be a picture or something like that, and it could cause some kind of problems in terms of just the settings itself. Now phone should work fine, but you won't be getting, for instance, like the great experience out of this one. Now I also want to point out the amazing battery level, 69%, nice. Yep. So moving further with it, because this is an AMOLED display, obviously it has HDR10 plus. It gets really bright as well. I believe if I max it out right now, it will be a little bit cupping what I have in exposure settings right here. You can see it's a little bit too bright right now for the camera, so I'm gonna drop it down to something a little bit more normal. There we go. I think this looks a little bit better. Outside of that HDR10, it peaks out 1300 nits, that's the max peak brightness. Also has a Gorilla Ventus, so glass at the front, just a typical, so I guess this is, I believe, the newest one. And when it comes down to just a screen to body ratio and pixel densities, we are dealing here with a 88.3% screen to body ratio, so this is taking majority of the screen right here, and 394 pixels per inch, which is a little bit higher than I was actually expecting. This is, after all, a 1080p display, which is a little bit of a, basically a draw or downscale, I guess, from like the previous S20, which were coming up with a 1440p resolution, and you did have a choice between either going with a 1440p resolution at 60 or 1080p at 120. Here we just get basically the high refresh rate and single resolution, so we don't really have a choice, which is a little bit of a bummer that Samsung decided to make that choice for us. In the S20 lineups, we did get the choice there to choose which one we prefer more. Some people may want to have just a better resolution, and they don't care about the refresh rate. Here you don't really get the choice, so that's a little bit of a bummer. Now, going further to the cameras, now this phone here, I believe, shares basically the same cameras as the S20, so the smaller and a little bit less spec'd out version of this one. I quickly check it just, so it's 12, 64, and 12, and 12, 64, yep, so it's basically the same. So if we flip it over, bam, we get a sticker, which, let's get rid of it. There we go. I'm gonna just stick it somewhere. Voila. So here, as you can see, we have a triple camera setup. It looks exactly the same as on the S20 or S21, I mean. The phone itself is a little bit bigger. Not much more difference here. It comes with a 12 megapixel wide sensor, 64 megapixel telephoto, and 12 megapixel ultra wide. And just as the S21, the smaller version of specifically this one, it shoots at 8K 24 frames. If you drop it down to 4K, it can shoot at 30 and 60, so that's really nice. And then also 1080p, obviously 30, 60, also slow motion at 240 frames. And if you want to drop it even lower to 720p, which will approach a little bit of a pixelated territory, you can shoot at super slow motion of 960 frames per second. So this will make the footage look, well, super slow. But now I'm gonna use the camera a little bit just to show you how it actually looks like. It's not going to be anything substantial here. I'm just going to capture a couple of photos of the plant and call it a day. But it is a really good camera, which like I said, capturing plant won't really do it justice. So let's get the plant right here. You can see it. Now it is right now a little bit, the environment that is in, it's a little bit poorly lit at this moment. It's not the best that it could be. So keep that in mind, that if the photos are looking a little bit weird, different than what you've seen in other cases, I am not taking photos outside. I am literally in a dark box. So you will, as you can probably see from the foam that is basically all around me at an angle. So this is on the corner, you can basically see it. So this is a fairly poorly lit room, and the only lights that are here are from the 3 little lamps that are, as you can see, reflecting right here, here, and here. So let's get the camera. So we're starting off with the wide sensor, and let's capture a photo here. Also, I'm gonna check if it's clean. And yep, it looks spotless. So let's go. So that's wide. Then this is a 3x zoom. I do need to pull it back a little bit. Now there's this really nice haptic feedback when you capture a photo. Cool. So I just captured a couple of photos right here. So let's see how they came out. So gonna make it a little bit brighter. There we go. So here you can see the ultra wide sensor. And at ultra wide, you do get a wider shot, but it does suffer a little bit in quality. As you can see, this is kind of bad, I would say, for some reason. But then if we go the 3x zoom, this is just looking amazing, I would say. This is better than, for instance, what macro lenses can do majority of the time. So just a 3x zoom on a 64 megapixel sensor outperforms what I used to. I use the Huawei Mate 20 Pro as a macro shot. That was really good for a long time. Here, I would say this hands down outperforms the macro lens when you're trying to get pure quality of the photo. Obviously, when you zoom in super close like this, it is a little bit blurry, which you can see it on the photo. But let's consider the fact that we are zoomed in so close that when you zoom out, this is a super detailed photo. And it looks really nice. Now there is a little bit of a blurriness going on around the edges here, which I don't think should be happening. And this is just, I believe, the AI really grasping what it's taking a photo of. So this should be focused, obviously, because the part right here is. But it does kind of blur it out with the background for some reason. Okay, whoops, not what I wanted to do. Let's go back and look at the last one. So this was just a typical wide shot, and obviously it looks also really nice. Again, it looks like it's a little bit. This actually came out a little bit better in terms of how it blurs it out. It does have a nice bokeh effect, I would say. Maybe a little bit too strong, but it does add a little bit of that depth and make the image pop a little bit more. As you can see, you can clearly see what is the subject of the photo right here, and basically everything is just kind of background. Now also, I'm gonna turn off the lights right here, and let me turn off the monitor as well. So I'm gonna take a night shot, and you can see how it does basically in super poor lighting conditions. And the only light that you will be seeing is, if I can lock it, so where is the, I'm trying to find the reflection of, but there is basically a monitor right here, which is the monitor that I used to see what the camera sees above. So once I turn off the last light, this one, this monitor will only show what is going to be lighting up is just the screen itself, which can be well, not really visible. I have literally no way of showing it. But yeah, so the only light that will be coming out is whatever the screen right here lights up, and that will be transferred to the actual monitor. So let's turn off the light and see what we get to. Before I do, let me change to night mode. I can actually quickly find it. Oh, there we go, night. And as you can see on the camera, obviously you basically cannot see anything. My hand is literally under the phone, and the phone itself can see it quite okay. Now on here, it's gonna look, on the phone itself, it's gonna look much more grainy than when it actually captures it. But let's actually take a photo. So right here, it also autos to a 3-second exposure. And to see if I can make it into 4. 5, okay. Okay, so that was a 5-second exposure time. And let me turn back on the lights. Okay, so let's, come on, flip over. There we go. So if you look at it, you can clearly see where it was, where the light was coming from. And like I said, the only light visible on this photo itself is the glorious backlight of a monitor that is right here. And the only thing that is lighting it up is with the actual phone itself, which the camera sees. And if you look at the photo actually closely, you can see that basically the light was coming from this direction based on the shadow and how dark the side that I was capturing is right here. Well, as you can see, it is kind of Kind of has like dark spots based on the lighting that came in. But anyway, considering this was a 5-second exposure and a room that is almost fully black, this is a really outstanding result. Now, obviously, in a real world, if you go outside during night, you will get far greater results here. After all, during night, there's still plenty of light sources outside from like shops and cars and stuff like that. So the camera will pick all those up and basically produce a way higher quality photo than what I got here. This is basically with the trashiest, most disgusting example that I could have basically simulate here with just a single poorest light source possible before. If I would turn off that monitor, this room would be literally pitch black. There would be zero light. And at that point, I believe if you try to capture a photo with almost zero light, sometimes you can, but the phone will, in certain cases, drop to like 30 frames exposure or 30-second exposure, which in terms does need to, I believe, be stabilized for the photo to actually come out good. And if the phone doesn't actually detect stabilization or that it's mounted to the tripod, then it won't opt into that long exposure. That's also not producing the best results. But like I said, we're talking here about the most extreme cases ever. Anyway, you can also actually take out the selfie camera. So there we go, there's the selfie. Now obviously you can clearly see the quality here is really good. It does look a little bit wonky right here for some reason. This looks really weird, like it's almost double photo, one overlaid over the other one. Not sure what is happening here. But otherwise the detail is here. It looks really nice. I believe it does make me look a little bit thinner, like it kind of smooshes it and makes the photo longer for some reason, but I might be just completely wrong and not remember how I look like. Well, but yeah, anyway, let's get out of here and go over the last part. Now, actually before I do, I'll mention that the selfie camera right here that I just captured is a 10 megapixel wide sensor. I just thought I would drop that in there just so you know what the photo was dealing with here. Now, moving on to the last part, which is I would say the worst part of this device and overly the S21 lineup, well, at least where I'm from. It's going to be the specifications. So this phone right here comes with an Exynos 2100. Now, obviously, if you're buying this in the US, you don't have to worry. You get the actual better processor of Snapdragon 888. But because I'm not from US, I get to have to deal with the Exynos 2100, which it is a better and just CPU performance, hands down. Not by much. Basically mediocre, but then it loses in just a raw GPU performance. And anybody who basically tells or says that it's comparable, I don't really care that it is comparable. When you pay the same price for the device that comes, the same price for instance, the S21, it costs the same no matter where you're buying it, but in certain region of the world, you will get an inferior product. I don't care if it's inferior by a 3%, 5%, single or 0.5%, it is still inferior compared to what someone else is getting for the same price. And even though the CPU here is tiny bit better, because it is, people that will use this for gaming will have an inferior experience. And that is not just the processor or the graphics unit here being a little bit, not as good as the Snapdragon version, but also just the overall throttling and problems like that are more present on the Exynos version rather than the Snapdragon. Snapdragon runs a little bit smoother in terms of graphical performance and throttling, while the Exynos, from what I've seen benchmarks and stuff like that, is more volatile. It just drops and jumps all over the place. So keep that in mind. That is one thing that I really don't like what Samsung is doing. Just drop Snapdragon to every device or none. Don't give EU some trash Exynos that you try to perfect over the years and using us as basically a test subject. Because anybody who's buying the Exynos version, what I would do is call this basically a beta release, and anybody who basically buys it is a beta tester in a way. Because once they actually do a good version of it, I wouldn't be surprised if they give you, yeah, here you go, here's the Snapdragon, now get happy, while the Exynos users that will have a way better process, Snapdragon, not Snapdragon, but the Exynos processor, will be US again. I wouldn't be really surprised about it, but at this moment, as it is, the Exynos that is in here, and comparing it to the Snapdragon, is inferior, and that's why I kind of feel like I'm a beta tester of a device while paying full price, while the US is basically getting something that I would call better. Now anyway, moving to the rest of the specifications, because I kind of went on a rant here. We do have 8 GB of RAM, and that is the only version here. We do also have 2 different versions of storage, so it comes with a 128 and 256 GB storage, both UFS 3.1, so you're going to be getting really fast read and write speeds on this, as you should be if you're dealing with something like 8K footage. That is, well, going to require some fast storage. But unfortunately, you're not getting an SD expansion slot. So if you wanted to expand it via SD card, yeah, you're kind of bummed out. All you get is max 256 gigs, and you better be happy with what you get. Because if you want a SD expansion slot, you better opt out for the Ultra. Now, what you can see right here in terms of how this device is made, or at least the entire S21 lineup, is they decided to take the same approach to just the different versions of S series, specifically S21, the same way that they did with the before, when you had Note, S, A lineups and all those. So before they were all kind of Note being the most premium, S being basically the typical flagship, then A being the kind of mid-range, and there was also, I think, one lower as being a budget version. And what they're doing now is also dividing that same kind of, or adding the same kind of dividation to this, to just a single like lineup of, for instance, S flagships. And now S21, just the base one, will be kind of the bare minimum, rocking the flagship with the specs that they're calling it, with Exynos 2100 or Snapdragon 888. Well, if you go for the Plus, you're gonna get, for instance, bigger battery and a couple additional features. And then if you opt into the Ultra, you're gonna basically get the max lineup of what they have to offer at this moment. Now, moving further to it, this device that I have right here, the 21 Plus, does come with a 4,800 mAh battery, so it is by 800 milliamps bigger than the S21, so the smaller version of this. And it also has a 25 watt charging, which, like I said, doesn't come in a box. There is no space for a charger, and this is kind of hilarious considering Samsung was one of those that decided to basically take a jab at Apple for not including chargers, and then what do you know, next lineup of their phones comes without a charger. Now it does come a little bit cheaper, so that is I guess a benefit of this. But then also, if I look at this, I wouldn't be so sure if it's coming actually cheaper, because this costs about $1,000 and comes without a charger. And it comes with the best processor, yeah, sure, good storage, okay, cool, wireless charging, all that jazz. But if you consider it, other devices on the market, they also come with the same thing, also with a charger, and also they will most likely come at lower price tag. Now I am really waiting for OnePlus to come out with their new device, their flagship, and I want to really compare it, because I think that one will come with a charger and it most likely will be comparable to this, and we will see what kind of price it comes and what comes in a box with it. But at the moment, I kind of find it pitiful that Samsung decided to make fun of Apple for doing something like dropping charger, and then they did it themselves and thinking that no one will point out a finger here. And finishing up the charging specs right here, even though you don't have a charger in a box, it does also charge with a wireless charger. So if you have one, you can simply slap it on. Let me just bring one. Voila. So you can drop it on here. Assuming it's plugged in, there we go. And it's charging. Now, it does charge with a 15 watt speed right here on a wireless charger. So it is better than some other devices, but then it is still behind in terms of some, I would call, market leading charging speeds, like 120 wired charging and 40 watt wireless charging. So this is far behind. Now I assume Samsung just doesn't want to make the same mistake of their devices blowing up, because that would cost them even more now. So I guess it's kind of expected that they didn't include a faster charging, but then come on, it's 2021, just make it up to at least 30 or something like that. But also, apart from the wireless charging, we do have the 4.5 reverse wireless charging, and I believe this hasn't changed much. I think that was just the base reverse wireless charging as it was before. Now, reverse wireless charging is primarily used for charging your earbuds and stuff like that, so you can just flip the phone over, slap your earbuds on here and charge them without actually needing to plug them into anything. Nice feature. Honestly, I rarely have used it. So that being said, it is there, but kind of find it pointless, but maybe you don't. And that being said, this would basically conclude the overview of this device. Now, personally, it is a okay device. I really have a problem with that Exynos processor right here, even though it's supposedly faster in CPU performance. I just would want to see the same processor on every device, so I don't have to go on a couple hour search to see which processor exceeds at what part of process power. So if it's better in GPU or CPU performance, I just want to see one, so I don't have to pick and choose and basically debate if the EU version is better than US. It's just kind of ridiculous at this point. So that being said, this is one problem that I have right here. Also, the device being priced at about $1,000 seems a little bit overpriced at this point, considering it doesn't even come with a charger. And I believe the $1,000 that I pulled out the price is also for the base version, so the 128, not the 256 gigabytes. So if you want more storage, you will have to fork out even more. But from what I remembered, it only is about $50 more, so not that much. And then lastly, when I compare it to, for instance, S21, just the smaller version, if you're not looking for a bigger screen, then probably going for the smaller version of this will be better. It is cheaper. It's a cheaper phone. Comes with basically everything that this one does, minus the huge screen. And overly, I would say it will be a better purchase just because of that price tag being lower and still offering almost the exact same experience as this one does. Because this is just a bigger version of the S21. But if you're looking for the actual, the best experience here, then you're not even going to be looking at this device. You're going to be looking at the Ultra, which I haven't actually checked the price, but I assume it's going to be somewhere around $1,500. But the benefit there would be that you actually have a better camera setup. Now, the one on the Ultra, it is better than what you get here. This is equivalent of the S21, which comes at around like $700. So keep that in mind. But yeah, that being said, I personally wouldn't be getting this device. It is big and expensive for, expensive for no reason. Big is just, I would prefer something smaller. That's just personal taste. If you want bigger screen, then yeah, sure, you can go for this one. But if you're looking just for bang for your buck, I think the S21, the smaller one, will be a better choice here. So that being said, if you found this very helpful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and thanks for watching.